Most fans grew up believing Melissa Gilbert and Melissa Sue Anderson shared the same warm, sisterly bond off-screen that Laura and Mary Ingalls displayed on Little House on the Prairie, but according to Gilbert, that image was carefully crafted for the cameras and only loosely connected to reality, because behind the scenes their relationship was quiet, distant, and shaped more by difference than devotion. To understand why, Melissa Gilbert's story has to begin long before the Prairie, with a childhood marked by contradictions and unanswered questions that even she admits still don't fully line up. Born in 1964 and placed for adoption almost immediately, she was raised by Barbara Crane and Paul Gilbert, who gave her love but also a version of her origins that later unraveled. She was told her birth parents were refined professionals, only to discover years later that her birth mother was not the elegant ballerina she'd imagined, and her birth father was a stock car racer living far from the polished life she'd been promised. By the age of 8, her adoptive parents had divorced, her mother remarried, and Melissa felt emotionally disconnected from her stepfather, while lingering doubts about her adoption deepened when she learned both adoptive parents had been capable of having children all along. Even as those questions simmered, her childhood accelerated unnaturally fast, with commercial auditions before she could form full sentences and television roles by the early 1970s, including Gunsmoke, until everything changed in 1974 when she became Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, a series rooted in Laura Ingalls Wilder's deeply personal books about survival, hardship, and resilience on the American frontier. Fame came quickly, but so did its cost. While the show portrayed safety and family, Melissa's real life grew darker, especially after the devastating loss of her adopted father at age 11, a death she was initially told was a stroke, only later learning it was suicide driven by unmanaged pain from his war injuries. That loss left a void she instinctively tried to fill, forming a powerful bond with Michael Landon, her on-screen father, who became a stabilizing presence until adulthood reframed their closeness and his own struggles with alcohol. When Landon later left his wife for someone on the show, it reopened childhood wounds for Melissa, leading her to sever contact entirely. As she entered her teens, her personal life grew as turbulent as her fame, from an innocent romance with a young Tom Cruise before he was famous, to a deeply intense and public relationship with Rob Lowe that began when she was still a minor and ended years later in heartbreak, miscarriage, and emotional collapse. Alcohol slowly became her refuge, even as her career continued and her relationships grew more complicated, including a whirlwind marriage to Bo Brinkman that unraveled through betrayal, shock, and public humiliation, followed by years of drinking, unstable marriages, and quiet career drift. Through it all, her resilience showed in moments of reinvention, sobriety, and hard-earned self-awareness, even as her body bore the cost through severe spinal injuries, surgeries, and near-constant pain, including performing on stage for months with a broken back and later suffering concussions and herniated discs after Dancing with the Stars. Against that backdrop, the tension with Melissa Sue Anderson becomes clearer. Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, was different from Gilbert in nearly every way, more reserved, more mature, more controlled, even as a child. From their first screen test, Gilbert sensed a wall between them, made thicker by insecurity, personality clashes, and the pressures of growing up under scrutiny. Anderson's character was written into relentless tragedy, while Gilbert's career outside the show flourished, quietly widening the gap. As they aged, Anderson matured quickly, dating older actors and carrying herself like an adult, while Gilbert still felt like a kid trying to keep up. Rumors of rivalry followed Anderson's eventual exit from the series, but both women later denied any feud, explaining instead that they were simply too different to be close, shaped by different families, ambitions, and emotional needs. Anderson later confirmed much of Gilbert's account, acknowledging that while the gossip hurt them both, the truth was far less dramatic. No hatred, no jealousy, just two young women navigating fame from opposite emotional worlds. In the end, Melissa Gilbert's story isn't about scandal or bitterness, but about survival, growth, and the quiet realization that not all on-screen bonds are meant to exist off-camera, and sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that distance doesn't always come from conflict, but from being built differently from the start.